I'm gonna, and I will make you host. Anybody
Right.
else want to be, well, you can make anybody co-host.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming we had I think when you left our last meeting, we had a couple minutes left, but I think that ended the meeting for everybody. But I think now that you've made me co-host, I don't think we'll have that problem today in case you need to leave early.
No, if I leave now, I mean, I can zero you out and mute everything just in case, but I should be able to leave with you
No,
guys.
I think as long as I'm the co-host or a host of the meeting, we should
You're
be
the host, so you can
okay.
check it. You should be able to I can't share anymore.
Yeah.
You're the only one who can
Okay.
until, yep,
All right. So we should be good.
you should be good. So,
Um, Gabe, let me ask, just on our agenda for tonight. I know, in terms of items that you want us to cover with you, I know we
mhm.
have the tree continuation of that tree warden
Yep.
FinCom transfer request that we talked about last time. Is there anything else that you need to make sure we talk about, that you may not have seen on the agenda?
No, I was not planning on coming tonight.
Okay. Well,
But I can come on the next one. I do need a transfer for the tree warden. He did give me the amounts and the street name.
okay.
And then I'll need a transfer into office supplies.
Okay. So I'll tell you what, if you could hang on for just a little bit, we're doing the budget review for Gail, our town accountant, and can you hang on for just that item, and then we'll go straight into that transfer request at
Sure,
that point? Okay.
sure, not a problem.
All right. All right. Well, first of all, I'm going to call the FinCom to order at 6:32. Um, I don't think we're waiting on anybody. Let's see. One, two, three. No, we've got everybody. So first item um, is the budget review for Gail Weiss, our town accountant. Thanks for joining us, Gail. I'm going to just share the budget document, probably the most straightforward budget we're going to look
Yeah,
at, I think, this year.
that's
Um,
just basically my software maintenance.
yeah. Um, did I share the right screen? Can everybody see this okay?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Great. Okay. All right. So really only two lines. Um, and the Vadar software charge that's built into our agreement, right? That we signed on to when we made
Yes,
the
I
transition.
believe for another 2 to 3 years.
Okay, got it. And then at that point, we'll have to negotiate a new contract with them.
They
And
tell us, they pretty much tell us what
okay,
it's going to be. Yeah.
okay, so that is essentially a flat funded line, and same with your certification uh,
Mhm.
request. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Any questions from the FinCom? Okay, I don't see any. I had a question unrelated to the budget itself, but while we have you on, I think you have some awareness of this public request for this open checkbook service that I think a couple of town residents have recommended or suggested would be something that would be worth the investing in for the town. We had a brief kind of conversation at our last FinCom meeting about it, and I think before we could even sort of really dive into it, I think we sort of established that two non-starters would be one if this system didn't play well with Vadar, and second that potentially a non-starter would be if it required a significant amount of staff time, additional kind of staff time to maintain. Have you had a chance to sort of think about that proposal
A
at
little
all?
bit. I mean,
Okay. Do you have any
I've
initial
always,
thought?
I've always had the in Orange and Hadley, and
Mhm,
I think another town that I helped out. We just basically put down that summary sheet.
mhm,
I can see some issues. I can do detail. I know in one town they did a monthly detail, but you got
mhm,
to be careful. Like I would never put out under the veterans benefits any detail on that.
mhm.
And then on the health insurance and insurance, sometimes we um, reimburse citizens, or not citizens, employees for
Mhm.
out-of-pocket cost. And again, that could be in violation of HIPAA if those get published.
Interesting.
So it can be a time-consuming thing, making sure those issues are handled if you want a detailed ledger out there.
I see.
Um,
Okay. No, that I'm really glad you mentioned that, because to be honest with you, that is not uh, anything that had occurred to me when we were talking about it. But you're suggesting that there's sort of potential kind of privacy issues related to specific payments that are made, and that could be a problem to have that be disclosed
And
publicly.
then also the issue of fairness.
Mhm,
I just get entries. I know they send me a detailed ledger for the
mhm,
schools, but I
mhm,
don't write the checks. The checks are written at the school. So when
mhm.
you see the school, you'll just see one entry, Shutesbury Elementary School expense,
Right,
and
right,
that's all you see on the detail. So if you
mm,
want to look at the schools, I do not have that information.
right. Okay. Got it. So so it actually for certain departments like the school, having access to that ledger information may not be as informative as people would have assumed, because you get a bunch of things rolled up into kind of a generic sort of transaction. Is that's the
Yeah,
point?
it's very generic,
Got it.
the school.
Okay. I see a couple of hands up, so let me go to Kathy.
Just a quick question regarding the certification line item,
Yeah, please.
because I'm just wondering what the ink cartridges explanation means.
No, that's just part of the 5515. It's part of that five. If you add up the three things, it equals $5,515. I should have just probably put certification down lower.
Oh, it's part of that first expense line.
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
all part of that first line. Next year,
Okay,
I'll remember, I'll move the certification line down further.
okay,
No worries.
thank you.
Great. Gabe?
So I think Gail covered it, but part of my concern was putting up the school. I mean, they are part of our budget, and that
Mhm,
I don't know how you would incorporate that using Union 28. Don't
mhm.
they run their general ledger off of Union 28 and then you just get the numbers, Gail?
Like, provide me a ledger,
Yep.
but because I don't print the check, there's no need for me to put in the invoices on my
Yep.
side, and that would be very time consuming
Right.
if I would had to do that even, you know, just to even if I ran it as a no check warrant
Mhm.
separately, um, because
Yeah,
that would be
that's where I see the big negativity in the whole thing. And I
yeah.
don't think you should do the town and not do the school.
Yeah. So basically, if I understand the point, basically any expenditure related to the elementary school, um, is going to be would in this theoretically, if we adopted this open checkbook system, would be described only in some sort of generic way as like Shutesbury Elementary School payment, and it'll be a large number with a bunch of things rolled up into that, right? Is that the point?
That is correct.
Okay, got it. All right. Okay, that's helpful. Any other questions for Gail before we let her go? Okay. All right, Gail. Well, thanks for joining us and sharing your budget info with us. This will be an easy one to roll into.
I'm just asking for extra money because the office supplies, the ink cartridges keep going up.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Well,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
All right. You take care. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's move on to this, considering this transfer request. And then Ellen, I see you joined us. Thank you. We might be able to get to you a little early. So, but if you can just hang on for, if you could just hang on for a little bit, we have one thing we've got to do before we let Gabe go for the night. So let me pull up this tree warden request. Okay. All right. I just sent this around earlier this afternoon. Bob, question? Oh, you're muted, Bob.
Just have a comment that might help the committee understand this issue a little.
Yeah, please.
I talked to Dave about this, and I pointed out to him that, you know, before Steve came along and became the combined tree warden and the highway superintendent, he used to do quite a bit of tree work out of his budget. It didn't come out of the tree warden line. It came out of some other part of his budget. I don't know what that was. I asked Dave if he knew. He does not know. He has no clue how that was managed by Tim. I suggested, we both agreed that we'd get together and look at his budget and see if we could figure that out. But this is something that he has not dipped into any part of his budget but the tree warden line to handle these expenses this year. So it occurred to me that that's something we have to sort out a little better before we transfer this money. But we agreed we'd meet later this week.
Bob, what can you share any information about sort of how you came to the conclusion that Tim, in sort of prior years, Tim had utilized some other budget line? Is that something that came up in? I'm trying to remember if that came up in our FinCom budget reviews, or if that was a discussion you had with him.
Well, it was very clear to me, and also with my discussions with Tim, he had been borrowing Stoney's chipper, and he has like several chainsaws over there, and they had those saws before Steve became the tree warden, and those lines became combined. And I did talk to him about, you know, how the tree work was going and what tree work he did and how he managed it. And he did hire a company from Greenfield to come in and assist him when he needed a boom truck or something like that. So again, this is I'm absolutely certain about that he did manage quite a bit of tree work out of his budget. So I don't think there was a line for it, though. I don't know where it came from, and Dave doesn't know either. I don't think that Dave and
was this during the period where like we had very little spending, if any, on the tree warden line at all? I mean, I have a memory that for some extended period of time there was like no.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We had a tree warden a couple of years ago who was not spending any money out of the line.
Right.
I don't know how many years he was in office, but there was some difficulty. Some people were urging him to spend money, and he was saying that he was getting the power companies and the phone company to do the trimming. And so he's no longer the tree warden. Then Steve became the tree warden.
Yeah.
And it became sort of reasonable to suggest that role that get folded into the highway department. But I'm absolutely sure that, you know, I've seen Tim working on the side of the road before that tree warden came along, and then after. And I've been in the shop there. There's like about 5 chainsaws and all kinds of tree work tools in there that have been there for quite a while. So this is something I don't really have all the answers to, but it's definitely popped up. I'm certain that there was a lot of tree work being done out of the budget. So Dave and I are going to try to figure this out. That's what we agreed
Okay.
to do today.
All right, let me go to Jim and then Susie.
Yes, I'm wondering if you could, Bob, perhaps, or someone else could find out where this crane and this bid of 1,600, where exactly is that going to be spent? Now, what road? The reason why I ask is what is the name of the company that's out there now? But the company, I just can't remember. Just it just slipped my mind. But they're doing a phenomenal amount of work along all of the roads. What? No, what?
Somebody's voice is randomly coming into this.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, if you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself, that would be helpful.
Well, at any rate, it's Nelson Tree, and Nelson Tree is just taking down trees are marked all over the place, and I'm just wondering whether the work that he wants to do locally, intersects with any of this. And I'd also like to say, yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, no, it sounded like somebody butted in there. I'd also like to say that our former tree warden who didn't spend any money was expert at getting, the reason he felt that he would save the town money by not spending it, but he also was extremely good at being able to get the National Grid to do loads of work for the town at no charge to us. So I'd like to at least put in a somewhat of a good word for him as well as to why the money previously was not spent in the budget.
Got it. Susie.
You're muted, Susie.
On it. There, I got it. I think that we could proceed with funding this line, and then if Tim was able to squeeze it out of other budgets, those budgets won't be as squeezed and it'll come back as unspent. I also know that Dave has spent a lot of effort talking to people in town. I'm sure he's talked to Nelson. I'm sure he's talked to National Grid. And I believe that when he's making this request, it's because the options that he has don't include those. And the company he was looking at was the blah, 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 blah. Oh, he doesn't list the company, so we don't know. Maybe he is talking to, it's Jim's Tree Service. So, I'm sure that he is looking at his options and making choices for the town that are in our favor.
Okay, Bob and then Gabe.
Yeah, I just want to sort of confirm that the roads that he mentions in his letter, or what he also mentioned to me, is Cooleyville and Prescott. There's no power lines, I don't think, on either of those two roads. So there's not going to be any power company helping us with this. And these are dead ash trees, which are suffering from a plague that's infected ash trees all over the Northeast, and they have to come down. They're not. It's not safe to have them there. So I'm not questioning whether we need this work done.
Yeah.
I just want to sort out for the committee about this issue that I raised. So I think that Dave has said he's interested in doing that. So that's what I want to add to the conversation. But yeah, this is not going to be done by a power company because those two roads are not served by poles,
Got it. Gabe. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yep, that darn mute. My understanding from Dave when we first had this conversation is that a lot of tree work that is now necessary, especially with the ash and the ash borer, is dangerous. He can't just take his chainsaw to the highway department and deal with it. He needs professional people to take it down. It's dangerous to the road. The Nielsen trucks that you're seeing all over the place, those are National Grid cutting all their trees along their power lines, and they've had two tree removal hearings with the town to give us their plan. So they are fully occupied doing exactly what we need them to do on their dime. What Dave does not have the capacity in his expense line to do this work. If he were to start doing it out of your expense line, then he's not going to have a whole lot of money for other things. That's part of the problem. This is unusual amount of tree cutting. And there are trees that should have come down. So that's kind of how he explained it to me. I do understand that if you think he has enough in his expense line to do that, but you really ought to be seeing what tree removal is going to cost you as a cost center, not mixed in with expense budgets. He also has had an unusual amount of mechanical repairs this year on his trucks. So I came to you a while back about a truck that was having issues, and we had to give him some money to repair it. He's had some more issues since then. So that's just my 2 cents worth. I do think he needs to finish this piece of the work. He's not coming back for the rest of the year. You may want to have him come back and talk to you about a tree plan for the future. I don't know if anybody's sat down with him and talked about a tree removal plan, so that you can figure it into his budget. But if you don't put that in the tree warden budget, I think you're not helping yourself understand what needs to be done.
All right. I think the appropriate thing to do here is for us to discuss and potentially authorize this transfer request. But I would like to encourage you, Bob, to continue whatever discussions you've started with Dave. And I think as Susie suggested, I mean, best case scenario, perhaps these funds that we may be allocating tonight end up being unspent, and that would be fine. But I would be a little concerned about delaying the process by not moving forward with this request. That's my instinct on kind of strategy here. Okay, I think given that, maybe I'll go ahead and make a motion to authorize transfer $5,000 from FinCom reserves to the Highway Department for the purpose of tree removal.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion about this?
Yeah, I just want to make a brief comment.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, Bob.
I think it's unfortunate that we move so quickly on these things without doing due deliberation, because there's some questions that I think are reasonable to get answers for. And I personally fully support getting this work done. And I fully support the taxpayers being justifiably billed for it because it's in their interest. But I just want to go deliberately through the process because of the points I raised. So, I don't see there's a big emergency for us to do this tonight, but that's the way the committee wants to vote it. I'll probably abstain from it because I just think there's no rush. There's not a panic here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments before we vote, George?
Yes, I'm looking at the expenses online for the highway department.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I don't see $5,000 available in too many lines.
Mm-hmm.
The wages line, of course, not the expense line. Budget is 3,000. There's 2,300 left. Materials, there's 11,003, which is 50% spent. And of course, machinery maintenance is about 50% spent. Tools and equipment, almost all of it. I mean, maybe the money's there, but it looks like he's been spending these accounts pretty much on schedule without this $5,000. So I tend to think, from what I see, that the $5,000 is not going to be covered in his lines. I mean, you folks can look at this too right now, but I'm not I tend to agree with what Gabe has said. That there is a need now and we should address it.
All right, Susie?
So one of the things that's weird is in the highway budget we sent him, we did not have the tree warden part.
Mhm.
That's not mentioned in the form that we sent. So then when you go back and look at the ledger, there's the tree warden expenses on page 3. And I'm not looking at a current one. And so when George is looking at the current one, George, is it the tree warden expenses that were funded?
Well, this is the 12/19 one, December 19th, so it's probably not current anymore.
And how much is spent out of it there?
So let me find that line because I wasn't looking at that line. That line, according to, has $799 left
That's what
out
he-
of a budget of
that's what he said.
4477.
And that's what he said. So
Yeah,
that,
that's what he said. I honestly, I don't have that line on the screen here. I have to scroll
Right.
down and find it.
well, so I just feel like he has been cutting trees. It is expensive to remove them. There's not a lot of money left, as you pointed out, in the highway budget in any other pocket. And I think that with the motion that's in front of us, I'm ready to vote.
Yeah, Susie, just for your information, the report I'm looking at, the tree warden expense was spent at 52%, 5151, but he told us 799. So he's
Yeah.
probably subtracting from that the bills he has in hand.
And this is the season to do that work. So that's the other thing. It's winter.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so seeing no other comments, why don't we proceed with a vote on the motion? George,
Hernandez, yay.
Groves, I changed my mind. Aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Gabe, do you, I think you'll be able to prepare the.
I'll do the reserve
transfer?
fund transfer form, yeah,
Okay.
and I'll
All
put
right.
it in your box and
Yeah.
then once you sign it, they'll transfer it. They won't transfer the money until you guys sign it.
Okay. All right, do you have a sense of when that might be there, just so we know?
I can, hopefully if tomorrow's not too crazy, because it's been crazy lately,
Yeah.
I can get it in your box tomorrow. They're not hard to do.
Okay, great.
So,
So if everybody could kind of make their way over sometime later this week.
It would be
that'd
helpful if there was a posting, an email telling us it's there.
sure,
Yeah.
I
Some
can
of us
do
are gonna
that.
forget.
great.
you
Yeah,
know.
No problem. I can.
okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, and Gabe, that was it? You needed us to,
I had
Discuss
one
what you-
more. Gail asked me today
Okay,
to
go ahead.
ask you folks. We have $400 left in office supplies. And so recently we had to order copy paper for the copy machine. Everybody uses that. That was a $500 order. And toner was a $500 order. So I know that you're low. You have $400 left in office supplies. So I asked Gail what she thought we needed till the end of the year. I asked her if we could overexpend the account. She's not comfortable with that. So she asked me to go ahead and come to you looking for $1,000 to transfer into office supplies to hopefully carry us through the end of the year.
Okay. Any questions about that from the committee? All right,
So I can make a motion. You ready?
sure, go ahead.
I make a motion, we transfer $1,000 from the FinCom reserve to the office supply line.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? No. All right, George,
Overnight side.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Okay. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, great. So we've got 2 transfer requests. George, quick question. I know you and I used to kind of keep our sort of log of where we are on. Have you been doing that recently?
Yes,
Okay.
because I do it, because I take the minutes, I have a record of them in the minutes, so I
Right.
just take them from there. I actually just did them both now, and as of right now, we're at 50,819 unspent if I got everything. So far, we had the town meeting items.
Mhm.
At town meeting, we increased it from 55 to 75,000, right?
Yeah, that sounds
And
right.
then we've taken out 9,000 for the highway for the truck needing repair, 9,000 for the fire department, really 9,100. And then the tree warden today, 500, and office supplies, 1,000. So 50,819 is what I believe is the right number.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. All right. So next up, we have Ellen McKay, our terrific collector, and we're going to review the budget for the town collector. Sorry, Ellen, I thought I was going to be able to get you in early, but it didn't work out that way. All right, let me share your budget.
I must congratulate you. You're really good at saying aye or nay in alphabetical order.
We have a lot of practice.
With a training.
We do a lot of voting. Yeah. All right, let's see. Let's make this a little bigger.
Oh, that is not the current one.
Uh-oh, okay.
That's okay. I can, it's
want it?
an issue, an item at the bottom.
Do you want to email me?
I thought I did. I thought I sent you the right one.
Let me look at my email.
It would have been before I left a week and a half ago. I mean, I can easily
Oh.
explain it and tell you what it is.
Is it the one that says second copy?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. All right. Apologize, folks. I may have sent around the wrong version, so I will.
Was the correct version in our Google Docs?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It probably, I don't think it was. I think I might have sent you the wrong version. So I will replace the one in the Google Drive with this one. Does this look right, Ellen? Oh, wait, I haven't.
I don't see anything.
Okay, hang on one second. Okay.
No, that's the same one. Wait a minute.
This is the one that's
Yeah.
titled.
No, but I'm looking at, no, it still doesn't have it. Okay, let me go through it. The easy way is for me to just go through it with you.
Okay, and I'll just
Okay.
make changes here. Okay.
Okay. Well, the banking fees, they were 4,500 this past year. You never know what the banking fees are going to be. It's a function of how many people use the lockbox.
Mhm.
So, and okay, computer maintenance is a flat fee for the next couple of years. The agreement was when I went into Vadar that it was going to be a flat fee for, I think it was 5 years. Paper stock, well, that's obvious. I need, the papers to print the tax bills.
Mhm.
Office supplies, and my toner is about $500 per box. So, but the boxes are the large size toner. So
Mhm.
hopefully 2 of them will work. Postage keeps going up every time I turn around, every 6 months.
Ellen, can I just pause you for
Of
1
course.
second? So
Huh.
I just want to make sure that I'm sharing the right amounts for
Okay.
these lines then. So
Okay,
catch us up here. We've got $4,600 for
4,600 for banking,
right?
the
Flat funding,
5,390,
right?
and paper stock of 2,000.
Yep. And then
Office supplies of 1,500.
So that's increasing $500.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I will probably need $1,000 just for the toner.
Okay, got it. So 500 ends up being other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, postage up to 5,000 because of the constant increases of postage. I still have to do all the mailings.
Right.
Travel
Okay.
and meetings doesn't change. Association membership went up because they decided, the mass collector treasurers decided to increase our dues of our size towns from $50 to $80.
Okay.
They hadn't changed a register a dues thing in a gazillion years.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
filings for tax takings, those, that's $105 per that get filed at the registry.
Okay. So that's
Newspaper
gonna,
legal notices. Now, once we're in that, we're into an interesting new world.
okay.
Many of you probably saw back in the summer. The banner headline was, well, the town's now going to have to give back to people if they auction a property, the difference between the expenses and the amount that's people bid or the winning bid. That's fine. But there was a lot more changes in that legislation to my whole process of doing the taking. And this is where the next few come in. Because what happens is a lot that happens is a function of whether you're doing it with residential property as defined by the assessors, which are the 100s, and the classified, which is 600, 700, and 800, or not, everything else. And because of this, they have some really interesting things that we're now going to have to do. For one thing, normally in about 8 days after the real estate are due, I send out a demand. And the demand just says demand, and it's, much like the regular bill. Well, now, not only will there be a new demand form, but there's also a 2-page document that has to go with it, which says, first of all, on the top, bold letters, and this was designed, the DOR, Department of Revenue, designed it per what the law said, the new law. It said this notice affects important legal rights and should be translated immediately. And that statement is in, well, it's the English, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's in 7 other languages too. But it's thank goodness they didn't we initially thought they were going to put the whole document in 7 languages, and I couldn't quite see, spending a fortune to mail these things out. And then it goes on and on and on, explains the whole process of what if you don't pay your demand, et cetera, et cetera. But it now is required to go. That shouldn't be a problem. I mean, a little bit more postage in some cases, but that's not the big problem. The problem stems from after you've sent out your demands and you've waited a decent amount of time and you're ready to do what's called the tax taking. Now, that used to be something you probably saw in the newspaper. Well, now they've changed it. If you are taking a residential property, and taking means putting a lien on, the collector gives notice by publishing it only in the town's website. Thank goodness, no more huge bills for the newspaper. Mailing the notice to the assessed owner's last and usual place of residence or business, and this is the one: post the notice upon the residential property. So I have in here the newspaper ads, because although we don't have many non-residential property, we may have some. And I never know who's going to go out on tax lien and who isn't. The next one, then down below that, on the bottom line, it says posting on property to go on tax title. Now, this means I have to hire someone to go and put these documents on the person's property. Needless to say, I will not do it. I don't think the police have any authority to do it. So what they're looking at as a continuation, this is from the Department of Revenue, they suggest we talk to town council and then arrange for a constable or a deputy sheriff, somebody who serves process, which can be all kinds of things, subpoenas or what have you, to go and do this. So this is something entirely new. And I don't know what's going to cost. I put $1,000 in because I'm hoping that it doesn't go over, but it might. I mean, it's random because we haven't done this yet. It took effect November 1. I had taken my takings for last year, the end of October, to avoid this problem. But this coming year, we're deep into it. So that's the line that we're missing here. Posting on property to go on tax title, I put $1,000 on it. And if worse comes to worse, I'll have to come back to you for more. Because it's, until we do it once or twice, we have no idea of how many are going on it. Anyway, so that's going to be interesting. And what has to be posted is not only the document about the tax title, but another document too. So it's not only the notice, but it's another document. It's going to be interesting, shall we say. If
Yeah.
they're not residential property, then we still have to advertise it in the paper. So it's like, why couldn't they make it one thing for everybody? But no, that isn't the way the legislature decided
So
to do
you're,
it.
you're gonna still need a newspaper legal notice
Yeah.
line. for
Yeah,
that
I am. I
category.
don't know how much.
Right.
I'm hoping that the people that don't have residential property will be good and pay their taxes, and then I don't have a problem.
Right.
But I can always use it then for the posting on the property.
Right.
And so
oh.
basically what happens is that went up.
Got it.
And I don't think my total's right. My total's here, right? It isn't right. Oh, it's 24,080
Okay.
with the increases.
So
And
basically, so the only thing that needs to be updated on this document is, well, one, I think we should have a discussion about this newspaper
Yeah.
notice line and whether we can assume that that can be safely reduced. Because
I'll tell you, I took 2 parcels
Mhm.
onto the newspaper in the fall. The
Mhm.
cost was $600 for the
Okay.
legal ad for one edition. And that was only 2.
Okay. So then the change is that you're essentially adding a new line
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, for posting.
Posting on property to go on tax title.
Right. Posting on property for tax title. Okay.
Yeah. And that was, I chose 1,000, and I'm hoping that everybody's good and pays their bills and I don't have to do any.
Right. Okay. All right. So if you can look at my screen here that I've shared, does this look
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it corresponds
That's
to what
right.
you? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
Bob.
exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ellen for my clarification for me. If you said, I believe you said that there's no longer an obligation for us to publish these notices in the newspaper.
On residential property.
Don't we
On
just have-
non-residential property, you still have to post it in the
Okay,
paper.
maybe I'm confused, but I thought we only had residential property in this town.
No, you can have commercial. You can have, not many, but we do have some commercial. So yeah, there are some properties that are not. We say we're rural residential, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's a classification the assessors use.
I see, okay. And then the other thing that confused me, Ellen, was that you have your certificate stipend on the right hand.
I didn't put that on.
Okay, so that's not included in the budget.
It comes as usually as a line item. I believe it is a line item under salary for all of us that have the
I see, I see.
classification, the
Okay, thank you.
certifications, I believe.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Jim?
Yes, Ellen, how many times have you had to go through this whole tax title routine?
Every year.
But I mean, how many times have you, gone through the court and the whole 9 yards? Does this happen often?
Okay, first of all, when you say going to court, you mean going to land court? That is the
Well-
treasurer's responsibility.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just curious as to how well have Shutesbury taxpayers been paying their taxes, and is there always a small minority that you have to sort of do all this work?
Yep, exactly. And I never know how many, because the initial notices that go out or have gone out in the past, I could have 10, and then 8 of them pay or enter into payment plans. So then I might only have 2 that actually have to go to the file in the registry, but you never know.
Mhm.
And we have a whole lot of new people in town, so that could even complicate things more.
So it's about 2 people a year or something,
Well, it's been 2 for the last couple of years, but I never know.
Okay.
All right, George?
I would love it to be none, but it doesn't happen.
2 items on this. One on this posting of property. This is
Yeah.
consistent with what we heard from Ryan in our last meeting. He
Mhm.
said we have about
I'm
10.
sure.
Yeah, Ryan's budget was affected by this law change, and he
Yeah,
was saying that we have about
drastically.
10 in tax title.
Yeah. Yeah,
is
but
what
it's
he told us.
drastically, because anything that takes after it goes to him, in other words, after it's been filed at the registry of deeds, and then it goes to him, and then he has to wait at least a year after I have done the taking for him to file it with the land court. The land court can take another year. So now you're at 2 to 2.5 to 3 years out before anything can happen. But yeah, it's going to really affect him, because you've got to, if you decide to auction it, you have to and these decisions have to, I'm sure he told you, have to be made immediately after the land court gives it to you. You can't even wait. So, which means you have to know up front before you even finish in land court, is the town going to keep it? Or is the town not going to keep it and auction it? Let's say they auction it. You have to hire an appraiser. You have to have it done by you have to list it with a real estate agent. I mean, it's gotten so complicated. It's horrific. If you decide to keep it, then you still have to have an appraiser, and you have to have an appropriation in hand to be able to pay the owner for the difference between the amount on the tax title, or the amount of total tax is owed and all the fees, and the amount they get. So you're going to have to know what the town wants to do immediately or earlier. It's messy.
George?
My other question was, do we need to budget the assistant town collector line, or can we send that back to zero?
No, he still works for me. He's so busy with everything else, though. If I go away, he usually works like 4 hours for me during the week.
So you're thinking we still need $2,500?
I don't think we need that much necessarily, but you'd have to, because as I say, with him being so busy, he doesn't have the time to be able to come in and cover for me. I wish he was able to cover for me more. I'm still unburying myself for what I found when I got back of the stuff he couldn't do because he was only there Tuesday and Wednesday morning.
So, and one of the reasons we have that person is your backup, but also in anticipation of someday combining the treasurer with the town collector. Is that correct?
I don't know what the intent is. We took it
But-
apart. It was always apart, actually. And even though when I was both, it was apart.
So,
So I don't know. It will all depend on what the town wants to do. Do they want to combine it, or do they want to leave it apart and just pay maybe somebody to do both jobs?
But
So
you're,
I don't know. Go ahead.
well, I mean, the question is, do we need to fund that line? You say yes. To
I
what
say
extent
yes
do we
to
need
some
fund it?
extent. You could probably cut it to 1,000 just to be on the safe side.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion based on what's happening currently.
But he, at $1,000, he can give you the support you need and still be able to be your backup.
Yeah, I'm sure. As long as, yeah, I would say yes. But
Jim?
once again, it's a guess.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim?
Yes, Ellen, have you gotten much feedback on the way that the new tax bills look and the detail on them versus the older bills that we used to get up until a few years ago? I was just
Okay.
wondering whether you
Good
had any
question.
feedback.
Good question. Part of the problem is people are not reading the new tax bills because it clearly says what portion is to be sent in with the bills. And inevitably, they send the wrong portion in with the bills. So, but that has nothing to do with it. That's just, I'm trying desperately to educate people and I don't succeed too well. But no, they don't, it's got all the same information. It's just not on the back of the bill anymore. It's on the front of the bill in between the two pieces with the document. So no, I haven't got much feedback on it. They
No,
said, the feedback's basically been, oh, this is new.
The old bills seem to have more detail having to do with
No,
outbuilding,
same.
chapter 61, things like this, that no
Well,
longer.
it still has 61 on the new bills
Mhm.
because it has the classification listings.
Okay,
And no, there was never but the information is still the same.
yes, okay, thank you.
Susie?
That's statutory. What's on the bills is the state telling us what's on the bills.
Ah.
I just noticed, I just looked back and the certification is a line item in each department's budget. So it's not into the wages, it's a separate line item. So somehow it should have been on this one as a line item.
Okay, I didn't know that.
All right, I'm gonna add it now.
But once again, that got put on by, I don't know, somebody, not me.
Yeah, I don't remember doing that.
I was wondering if it was personnel that put it on.
All right, does that look right to everybody? Yeah.
Where'd it go? Oh, there. Yeah.
So I just added it as a line, it's just at the
Yeah.
bottom. Okay. That's. We don't need that there. Okay. Susie,
So we also said that perhaps the assistant town collector
Yeah.
should be a line for $1,000 instead of 2,500.
Yes.
And it should be a line. It should go over
Well,
here.
it does have a line.
Well, it's in the column of explanations. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's true. That's not there because she doesn't include salaries.
No, right.
But there is a line in the budget for it, was my
Budget.
point.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
well,
what you're
I'll
saying.
add it. All right, so it was
It's
2,500.
nothing that I ask for. It's somebody else does it.
I
Sure
did
it's
these
not.
sheets this year. I don't remember because it's too long ago.
Oh, come on, Susie.
Yeah, my recollection is we were concerned about backing up Ellen, and Ryan was willing to do it, and it seemed like a good opportunity to more than just backing up Ellen, but also learning the job so that
Oh.
in the future he might be a candidate, and we might combine positions as many towns do.
Yeah.
Not necessarily committing ourselves to that, but certainly putting ourselves in position to do that.
I just want to say that
Yeah,
is
go ahead,
my-
Bob.
that's my recollection, George, that when we added this line, there was some discussion that Ellen, despite the fact that she seems like she's lasting forever, might decide to exit, and that Ryan it might be reasonable for us to combine it so that Ryan would be a good backup for her now.
Yeah.
And then in the future, we'd look at that as a possibility. That's my recollection too.
Yeah.
Just,
Just,
just my-
April.
yeah, my 2 cents. I remember the personnel board met with Ryan and at that time in his life, it looked like that was a possible career choice for him. But it sounds like he's a much busier individual than he was a number of years ago. But that's
Oh,
where it came
yes.
from.
I'm sure he is.
Not a significant amount, but I'm still sort of wondering if we ought to reduce this newspaper notice line by some increment, knowing that the bulk of our use for this line is no longer, being residential properties is no longer going to be applicable.
The only problem with that, AJ, is once again, as I said,
Right.
when I did this in the fall, we ended up with a bill for over $600 for 2 parcels.
And were those two
Non-residential?
residential properties or
They were residential, but it doesn't matter. You still have to have the same top head with all the information, and you still have to put the person's name and all the information about the land, even if it's just land. And then the another lines to talk about the amounts that are outstanding. So it really doesn't change anything. There's no other documentation on either of them. They're exactly the same documentation, whether it's just a piece of land or a commercial property or the residential property.
Oh, so, okay, I must be, so I don't think I'm understanding this then. I thought your earlier point was that that's no longer going to be a requirement moving forward.
It is a requirement for non-residential properties.
Right.
So
Right,
we have 2 different rules running parallel.
right, understood. So I'm just saying that example you're saying of how last year
Yeah.
you took them, if that had happened, if we experienced a similar number for this year, that would no longer require the newspaper posting because those were
Yes.
residential properties.
Instead, it's posting on site.
Right, exactly. Bob, I think you're muted, Bob. Yeah. Bob, you're muted?
We have two assessors on this panel, so I think they should be able to tell us how much commercial real estate we have that might fall under this rubric.
94% of our property is residential.
Yeah, it's clearly, it's not many. I think Ellen has a good read on that as well. I don't know the exact number.
I don't either, not without the back of the book in front
So
of me.
what
all the printouts.
what do you want to know? I can pull up the recap.
I want to know what properties that are not owned by power companies and so forth, that are non-commercial in town.
That are commercial.
It might require us to advertise in the newspaper a taking.
Well, we're talking real property, right? Real estate
Yeah, real
property.
property.
Yeah, just real estate. So it would
Yeah.
not be the 500s because that's personal. If you're
Yeah.
looking at the listing.
I don't have a
So you
count.
have-
I can tell you the value of them is $2 million for commercial, and industrial is $1.3 million. And the utility poles and all that stuff's in personal property, not real
Yeah.
estate.
It is.
So 3.3 million is what we have is the value of property that is taxed as commercial industrial.
Okay, thank you.
Out of, you know,
I can't tell
a
you
town
who.
that's valued at 339 million.
Mhm.
Right, so that's a very small percentage.
It is.
Yeah, but
very
it still
small
could be
percentage.
one or two
But-
bills. And once again, two bills are over 600.
Suzie?
I would like to propose that we reduce it to 500, given that perhaps commercial properties won't be in this category of tax taking or whatever the notice says. Because there's so fewer properties are like that, and that's just a proposal.
Well, you can do it, but then when I need 600 or 700 for an ad,
Come and see
I
us.
gotta take it from somewhere.
Well-
Oh, yeah, right. No, I'll take it out of one of my other line items when I have to. Gotta pay the bill before we
Yeah.
go through this.
We could, yeah, if needed, we could also do a FinCom transfer.
I know.
Okay, so that's a proposal. Anybody have any concerns about doing that? Reducing this to 500?
500 is a small number. I mean, for me, I feel like we should just leave it for a year.
Yeah.
That would,
Alright.
yeah. Yeah, I would prefer to leave it.
All right, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm the new kid, but I was gonna say the same thing. Just leave it.
All right. Done.
Withdraw my
Alright.
motion.
All right. Any other questions for Ellen before we let her go?
Ellen, when is the capital planning committee going to be meeting?
We're gonna try to set up a meeting next week. We've been waiting to get documents from any of the department heads and haven't gotten them.
Well, that's a good sign.
Well, no, not necessarily, because then people come in, oh my God, I missed the deadline, blah, 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 blah.
Well,
We get that all the time too.
The deadline
we're
is
gonna try to-
February 1st,
Yeah, and that's next week.
at the end of next week.
So you're thinking
Yeah.
we're going to meet in the first week of February?
Well, I think, yeah, that's kind of what Gabe and I were talking about. Once
Okay.
we have something to discuss.
Yeah, I'm only asking because I hadn't seen the notice or anything.
No, I know.
Okay.
April?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the new total for the fiscal year 26 budget would be with all these changes. I was trying to do it in my head and
Well, it was FY 24 was 24,950, so it's 1,000,
think I have it right here.
$1,130.
Well,
is that it?
yeah, I wouldn't include the assistant collector though, because we
No.
don't have labor costs in here.
Well, I didn't, oh, okay,
No,
that
Well,
means
you
I've got to
could,
take
I mean,
that
you
out.
could because you
Yeah.
got it in both places.
But it's on the ledger that way.
Yeah.
It's a line item on the ledger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but so is
So it's
Ellen's
not part of
salary.
my budget,
So is
per
Ellen's
se.
salary.
All right, so if we exclude the $1,000 for the assistant town collector, that.
Well, then you're gonna have to show that if you left it like that, it's deceiving because then the total will equal 20, whatever, and this one's, okay, yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's right,
Well,
yeah.
well, we
I'm not
have to
thinking.
be,
We had to be
My
consistent. We
concern
left
is
it in last year.
we have a line, a new line for the posting of the property.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't included in this before. And then we have collector certification, which is its own line in the budget. But I guess that doesn't matter here.
All right, I gotta make this consistent. Hang on.
So, because you've got it, when we first saw this, the total bottom line was 23,080, and that was just Ellen's tax collector expense line.
With
But
the
now we've
exception of
added
the
multiple
posting.
lines to this.
Right, yeah,
So
right.
now we're mixing things up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with you, George. I mean, and all I did was go up 1,000 because of the posting piece. And I'm just praying that that's all I'm going to need because I have no way of knowing.
But you're also asking for a new line item, a new expense to be added.
Yeah,
by
so,
the
so
town.
no,
exactly.
we're increasing $500 for office supplies, $1,000 for postage, and then this new line.
And
For
$30
posting
for
on top.
association membership.
Oh, right, and $30. So that is, so that's,
If you just,
Should that be 30 or 20
2,600.
for membership?
for the expense
Seven.
line, it's 22,080, because if you take out the last $3,000 worth of items, those are three separate lines.
Posting
And you're
is
just
not a
subtracting
separate line.
3,000 from the 25.
Posting is not a separate line. Posting on property, that's
No,
part of my
I
operations.
thought we were going to create a new line. Oh, you're going to keep it in there.
Yeah, it's part of my
Oh, I
budget.
thought you wanted a new expense
No.
line for that.
No,
Oh, okay,
no.
okay. So then we subtract the two, the certification
Yeah,
and the collector.
right.
It's 23,080. It's where you started.
okay, so we're,
I started,
sorry, so we're, from these totals, we're removing the collector certification and the assistant town collector, is that?
they go elsewhere.
Okay, all right, so then. That's,
They probably both go under payroll.
Yes.
does that look right? 24,080.
Yeah, that's what I have.
So
Right.
maybe what we need to do to make things clear is where it is called operating categories. What we identified was that everything but the last two lines are operating expenses. They are
Mhm.
collector expenses. And then the other two are salary related.
Mhm. Yes.
All right, and then. What, should I call them like personnel expenses
Yeah.
or something like that?
And when we handled this for the assessor, this discussion didn't clarify how some things were personnel and some things were operating, but
It,
we can work on getting clarification.
no, I feel like I run into this confusion every year because for some budgets, we see personnel, we list personnel related lines and then others we don't, but
Yeah.
we know what's going on. That's the important thing. Okay, Jim.
Yes, Ellen, I was wondering what if what is the percentage of those who pay online their taxes versus those who send you a check and otherwise have to engage you personally? And has that percentage changed in any way over the last year or two?
I haven't noticed a change within the last year or two, but it is definitely that people either use the lockbox or the online banking very, very heavily, as opposed to actually coming in. I mean, there are people who want to come in, or they're coming in for something else, so they handle everything in the building at the same time, but not many.
I see. Okay, thank you.
But the other two things are a godsend, because otherwise it'd be, you get this huge pile of envelopes and you got to open them all, and it's much easier to have somebody else do all that.
So most of the most of the payments are online into the lockbox nowadays. What, 80%?
I'd say even higher than that. Well, it's deceiving because I'm sitting here thinking, I have 400 parcels that get paid through, and through escrow accounts, through one lump sum that I get, they pop into my machine and I pop in their list and merge the two and end up with, you know, postings for a lot of
Mhm.
parcels. So, you know, I really can't, then is that, it's not, they don't come in, so I suppose it's considered in the other side. Yeah, I'd say maybe 10% we get over the counter.
Okay,
If
that's
that, and
good.
a lot of those are excise, not real estate,
Mhm.
because real
I
estate
see.
usually are pretty high.
Yeah,
Excise being your car taxes, you know, people come in with $5 or $10.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
anything else for Ellen? All right, thanks for joining us, Ellen.
Oh,
Appreciate
sure.
it.
You all have a good night and stay warm.
All right,
Yeah.
take care. All right, guys, I will replace that the collector's budget that's in our Google folder with this one that we just worked on. Okay, shifting gears, we've got our third and final budget review for the night, and that is for the fire department. And I'm gonna welcome Lenny, and hi Lenny, and I'm gonna share your budget or your proposed budget. Let me make sure. Does this look like the current one or the right budget?
This is the one I'm asking for. I'm asking for another line item for repairs.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we actually before we get to that new item, line item, you've got one line that's showing a small $400 increase. Do you want to just kind of summarize what is that? I'm trying to remember what yearly services refers to, and I can't.
Well, yearly services, I'm kind of changing it. It was
Okay.
maintenance originally,
Okay.
and a lot of things I put under the maintenance budget is more like service, like hose testing, pump testing,
I see.
uh, plyo vent service, the generator service, fire extinguisher service. And I have a list I gave to Susie
Mhm.
that says required yearly service and testing. So in it, basically it comes up to a line item at, $11,400.
Right. Okay.
If I do all of that, I don't
Mhm.
have any money for any type of repairs.
Mhm.
So what ends up happening is, a couple of the fire trucks don't get serviced, or the hoses don't get inspected, or the pump doesn't get tested, etc. So it's kind of always like catch up as for, which truck gets the yearly service for the year. And I think that's bad.
Got it.
Um,
Why
the,
does anybody who's been kind of working on this stuff for longer than I have, like, why is it this department? I mean, I feel like we have a maintenance line in like every other department, right? The police department's budget has the maintenance line, the highway department. Is there any explanation as to why we don't have one on the fire department?
it was a maintenance. Let me look,
So you think that used to be
yeah.
kind of rolled into what we're seeing here is now described as yearly services?
Yeah, so if Susie doesn't mind, we were talking earlier, well, I'll let Susie talk because she has her hand raised, and then I'll.
All right, go ahead, Susie.
Yeah, so when I talked to Lenny, the word maintenance, and repair was the name of that line.
I see. Okay.
But in fact, those words for maintenance were required inspections of things. They weren't like doing a lot of changing of stuff that you might associate with, sort of the highway stuff. That because it's a safety, public safety department, they have to have things inspected to make sure they're safe enough. And that doesn't change anything other than you pay for the inspector to come in. So Lenny and I talked about those are basically yearly services.
Right.
And that if we had it as one line called yearly services and repair, there would be no money for repairs. So we talked about trying to represent the costs of running the department a little bit more accurately. And it was interesting to go to the fire station and look at the different parts and realize that, Walter had made some decisions to not get some things inspected so that he could repair some things. But Lenny is talking to other fire chiefs and they're saying, no, you have to have that inspection done. And so calling it yearly services, which is really mostly inspections.
Got it. Okay, thanks for clarifying. All right, so Lenny, go ahead.
Yes, I have I don't know if I can post it to you guys. I know I did send it to Susie. I basically had a required yearly service and testing sheet. And I basically went down all this yearly stuff that is required and I have I have them all laid out and I put the warrant number on them. So some of them are from, 2025 to 2023. So I haven't really done yearly services on all of them all at once. It's always been staggered.
Mhm.
So I don't know if Susie can put that in. I know I emailed it to you back like a year ago, Susie. I'm not a year ago, apologize.
Right.
A month ago.
Yeah, and I don't remember forwarding it to AJ, so that was me dropping that ball.
I could probably forward it again to somebody.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you could forward it to AJ right now.
Okay, but I guess just letting to clarify, your point is that having itemized all of those required annual services, inspections, the total of those, that itemized list amounts to $11,400. And I think that's the important point for us. Yeah.
11,395.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So I think you can forward that to me and I'll share it with the committee, but I don't think it's necessary to share it like on my screen right now. I think we get the idea. You listed a bunch of the items that fall under that. But then I guess so then the assumption you're making is that a reasonable estimate of the amount of required repairs to equipment that would happen in a given year is $5,000.
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, I'm sure you guys remembered the truck the engine 2 needed pump service, and that was 9,100, I think. So, yeah, I can't tell you when the next time it's going to break.
Right.
And I do know I have to, at some point, I have to take the brush 2 in, and that's got electrical problems. So that could be a simple fix or it could be an expensive one. So that's what I'm estimating.
Got it. Okay. Let's see what questions we have from the committee. Anybody have a question for Lenny?
Well, the question I have is regarding the training and call wages and what's going to be the adequate amount for fiscal 26.
Mhm.
I think what we have right now should be sufficient. Because I had 20 on FY 24, I was over and you moved some money around and then you upped it to 27.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I probably should have asked for a little more than that, but I didn't. But yeah, I think the reason why you guys went down on the FY 25 for 19,000 for the call wages because on FY 24 we didn't have many calls. So it's again, I can't predict how many calls we're going to have for 1 year. 1 year we've had 160, and then last year I think we've had 115. So I can't predict stuff like that.
Yeah. But based on what you're seeing this year, you think you're probably okay.
Yes, I think it's going to be close. I may go back to you guys at the last minute like I did last year, but I can't predict anything on that.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So it sounds like for now, at least, we're gonna roll over these FY 25 amounts for training and call wages into the FY 26 budget. Okay, and we're gonna add a new line to distinguish it from these yearly inspections. And that'll be an amount of $5,000. That's the proposal at least. Bob?
Yeah, hi, Lenny. Just want to point out that for my way, looking at this document, I see essentially what used to be the repair and maintenance line was $11,000 last year. And now this new line, yearly services, has just expanded a little bit in the new line repairs. If you add those together, which is one way of looking at that, that's a 50% increase in repair line. You know, if that's another way of looking at it, if we use the old nomenclature. And then what we have at the bottom of this document is a 15.5% increase. So I just want to point out, I would really be interested in seeing the list of all these required inspections, because it must have gone up tremendously for it to impact the budget this much. And it certainly, if we're required, mandated to do it, then we have to do it and we have to pay for it. And you need a maintenance line. No one would question that. But that's a 50% increase over last year. And like I say, 15.5% on the budget. That's a fairly significant increase as well.
Yes, can I email?
Yeah, please.
If I can. No.
Yeah, when you get a chance, why don't you go ahead and email that to me, Lenny, and I'll share it with the committee and I'll post it to our Google Drive.
Okay. Trying to just do this one. Why can't I?
Don't worry, take your time to find it, Lenny. I don't think it's. I think the point is that it'd be, there's interest in looking at it, but I don't think it needs to. I don't think we need to go through it tonight as part of our meeting.
All right, yeah. Let me start an email here.
Okay.
And what's your email? If I don't, it's AJ.
Yeah, actually, so it's my first name, AJAY.
AJAY.
At
Youth Science Studies.
Yep, correct. YouthStudiesInc.com.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Lenny while we're waiting on
No,
him to
I just
come in
want
and
to,
talk?
I just want to ask a general question. Are we, I think I missed it. Are we going to continue to use just one line for the maintenance and repair, or are we going to request that a repair line be created for the fire department?
I think the proposal here, and I don't know, personally, I'm persuaded that these really are two different things. The inspections, required inspections, and repairs of equipment. I mean, those those are clearly two different kinds of expenses. So I'm persuaded that there should be two lines. There's a proposal about how to fund those lines, and we can have a discussion about that. But it seems to make sense to add a new line to the budget. Go ahead, Lenny.
Yeah, I can go either or on that. I know Susie talked about it and she kind of stressed that she would have rather see the required expenditure on services and testing be separate than the maintenance, just so like when I'm going over my maintenance budget, I can be like, hey, look, the fire truck broke, the pump broke, and something else broke, versus the required testing and services that's a little more of a that's all required, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And other departments have kind of maintenance repair lines, but I don't think they have this other type of expense that's getting loaded into that, where it's like it's really more about inspections and safety equipment. So. Okay. Any other questions for Lenny before we let him go?
So I did send that to you.
Okay.
So you might be able to find it shortly.
Okay, great. Yeah, I see it now. And since we're talking about it, I'll share. All right. All right, so you can see it here.
Could you blow that up a little?
Got a dozen items. You know what? I might need to. Here we go.
So 11,000.
So those rose lead notifications, those are for repairs, aren't they?
That's yearly service.
Maintenance repair, not inspections, right?
Yeah, the vehicle inspections, that's to get the inspection sticker. SCBA flow test, all our breathing, SCBAs, our breathing packs. They have a guy that comes out and tests them and all the masks. The compressor, the filter has to get changed and the compressor serviced. Pump testing, that's when they test the capacity on the pump and then check all the valves, make sure nothing's leaking. Hose testing, they make sure all the hoses are safe to use. Plyo vent service, the other people come out and service the plyo vent service. That's for the fume evacuation system. Fire extinguisher service, that's when all the fire extinguishers get inspected. They're required to get inspected yearly. Generator service, that's $600 to the truck. So yeah, as for the Rose Ledge bills, they change the oil and they do a full road check. They take the wheels off, they look at the brakes, etc. So those numbers change a little bit from one warrant to the other. Like I said, this is all really should be done every year. And if you look at the warrant dates, some of them are 2023 and one of them is done on 2025. So I've put all that over the course of, almost 3 years here.
Okay. All right, but there's all of these things that we see on this list are either an inspection or
mandatory service.
or
Yes.
like a service, right? None of them are repairs to specific problems. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay. Any other questions for Lenny? All right. Lenny, I think we can let you go then. Thank you for sharing this. Thanks, Susie, for working with Lenny on organizing all this information.
Thank you. All right. Well, I might as well hang up before my battery dies on the laptop.
Good night.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Good night, Lenny.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the last of our budget reviews tonight. So I only have 2 more items. One is reviewing minutes. Why don't we do that real quick? And let's see. George sent minutes from January 7th. All right. Kathy.
I looked high and low, and George does such a great job on these minutes. It wasn't easy, but I found a tiny, tiny little
No,
typo.
I am not insulted if you find something wrong.
No, and by tiny,
So-
I mean really tiny.
Are you looking at December 10th?
The one you sent this afternoon, I think.
January 7th, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
we're looking at January 7th. Okay.
January 7th.
Okay.
Section 4G, just a tiny little in the school.
Ah,
The school
Preforming.
has been recognized by the state as a high-performing school, that one?
Performing. There you go. That's all.
Oh, preforming. Yes, right. Okay. You got it.
Otherwise, it looked great to me.
Anybody else have any questions or corrections? Susie?
I had a question on page 1, H3. It says any assistance a veteran receives will decrease their monthly benefit. So I was trying to remember what that, how that played out in that conversation.
Well, we were trying to figure out how much money to put aside, and I don't think it was necessarily something it was just a comment that was made, and I just wanted to record it. That's all.
Okay,
It was,
are
I
you
thought-
thinking
I thought that-
the assistance from the VA? Then,
any assistance from anybody.
I think it's any other public assistance that they receive
any, yeah,
factored into the calculation, right?
okay. Right.
I think that was,
Is that wording still okay?
Is that would include something like fuel assistance?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, things that are not VA.
can we maybe
Things that
change it
will-
as
Yeah,
any public assistance
yeah, I
the
think that's a
veteran
good.
receives will decrease their monthly VA benefit or something like that?
AD, that doesn't quite cover it because she said that if they work, it also would increase their benefit. So it's not just public assistance, it's income.
Oh,
It's some kind of compensation or
Right.
income that they receive would reduce the benefit that we'd be responsible for.
you want me to add that? Any assistance or income?
Yeah,
Maybe any public assistance or income that a
or other
veteran
income, say.
receives.
Any public assistance or income a veteran
Yeah.
receives. That's what I have right now.
Yeah.
Right, will decrease their monthly benefit.
Okay, you got it.
Susie, is that anything else or that was it?
Yeah, and then the other one I was confused about was on page 3, section 7B. That we pay 800 for maintenance and testing plus 259 for reports for each home. So I'm not sure what the 800 for maintenance means. Do you mean the initial filter?
She mentioned, she used the word maintenance. I'm not, I think it's the person coming in and testing and doing whatever, you know. I called it maintenance and testing, but I think she was referring to the cost of the agency sending a person to our home.
I
But
think they
that's
gotta
the
do-
word that Gabe used.
Okay,
I think you're right, George, that they have to do either replace or clean the filters on a regular basis, and that's expensive.
Yeah, inspect, yeah.
yes, it's actually probably testing. They don't clean filters, but they initially install and then they test what the water set
They
has.
take a water sample.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
I
they do
just,
look at the equipment, but I don't think they really have to do anything to
no,
it.
They change
No.
the filters or
Not yet.
okay. all right.
We're
That's
not there
okay,
yet.
I think we could leave it. I think that, this whole thing will become more obvious over time.
Well, you know, Susie and I did meet with Aaron, and Susie had a lengthy conversation with Aaron about all this. And I do think we have to consider, and now's probably not the time, but we have to consider at what point do we start putting money in the operating budget for the ongoing activities?
right.
And, you know, right now we have no idea. And this is not the year to put anything new in the budget, as far as I'm concerned, but it is something we're gonna have to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just get these minutes approved, and then I do want to talk about some of the other things Aaron said.
Okay. All right, so I don't see any other hands, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended from
Second.
January 7th.
Maybe we still got the December ones as well, December 10th.
Uh, Do I have a second on that?
Second,
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and vote. George,
Arbornice, aye.
Groves out.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
Great. All right, and George, you said we
We haven't approved December 10th.
December 10th, okay. He's not aware of that, let's see. I can't even remember. Did we start to talk about this or we just ran out of time?
No, we didn't even get to it.
Okay, all right.
We never talked about these.
Got it.
Last meeting, we were pretty tied up,
Yeah.
kind of like today.
Okay. All right, so here are the minutes from December 10th. These are quite extensive. Any questions or corrections? I'll scroll through this here.
I have a note from our last meeting that we approved the minutes from December 10th, and I kind of remember it because I missed that meeting and I had to abstain. Am I misremembering?
So,
I don't think we did. I think basically we didn't talk about the minutes. I don't know. I we could go back and look at the recording, but I think we skipped them completely because we had so much going on in that particular meeting, and we ended up going until almost 9 o'clock.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I don't
Okay.
see, I don't see them in the minutes we just approved. So, I don't
Yeah,
see.
I would have had it in there if we did it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we didn't.
All right.
In fact, I know we didn't because I was going to say something, but we were all pretty tagged, so I just let it go.
Thanks.
maybe that was wishful thinking on my part then.
Yeah.
Well, we could always approve them a second time, you know.
Sure, why not?
Let's be thorough. I think they're a work of art.
Certainly extensive. Thank you, George.
Oh
right.
man, it was a lot.
I don't see any hands, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes from December 10th as written.
I'll second that.
Okay, George,
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador abstain.
And Stein, aye.
Great. All right. Only other item I have is an ARPS update, but Susie, it sounds like you had some other news from your conversation with Aaron that you wanted to share. When we talk
Yeah.
about
So we talked with Aaron about the PFAS, and one aspect of it is the workload, especially because Shutesbury was setting the path for dealing with this. There was no template to follow. The workload on the administration is ridiculous. And so even getting the second grant from the Clean Water Act creates this big paperwork thing. We're in a difficult time because we changed administrations at the same moment, and the institutional memory for this unusual thing walked out the door, and the paperwork was onerous. All towns will end up dealing with PFAS. This is not a Shutesbury problem. And so he suggested that the burden on local administration for this particular project, and probably many others, needs to be lifted out of the town and put on like a FERCog thing. I know ARPA did the same thing. ARPA created a lot of paperwork for all these towns. And the way life is going, having these duties put on administration in small towns is not going to be workable. So I don't know if we should have a little subcommittee of people kick around aspects of the PFAS situation and then draw up a proposal. I will just say that FERCog has a mixed record on what it can pull off. And I don't even really know, I don't know personally what we would ask them to do. But we do know that like getting the paperwork for the Clean Water Trust was a lot of front work, and it happened again at the next application. And he said, yeah, you know, that doesn't have to happen. The application process doesn't have to be a big bureaucratic hurdle. So we for the finance end of this, we should maybe figure out what to advocate for our town. Because we don't have a full-time administrator right now, maybe this has to wait. But like George said, we have to at least get through another year of FY '26, looking at those expenses and deciding how to put them in the budget. Are they a separate borrowing thing, warrant, or what? But this idea of just having towns manage this kind of bureaucracy is not okay. It's not even possible. It has to be done differently. George, do you think that's what he was acknowledging?
Yeah, no, he agreed with us. He didn't, he didn't see the dust settling on this anytime soon. There's no money, it seems like, at the state level other than through this loan program to support us. And he did make the recommendation about FERCog, which I think this issue is big enough for all these small towns that, economies of scale make sense. And so, and having a big brother to advocate for everybody, I think would also be really good. I don't know FERCog's history in this regard, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So it's really two separate issues, right? Because even in that scenario, I'm assuming jurisdictions would be financially responsible for, for paying for the obligation that, that falls on their town because of, whatever issues have been discovered. But so in that scenario, we might, in addition to more support from the state for these expenses, we probably would pay FERCog or whoever was responsible for it some amount of funds based on our obligation that they would then administer along with sort of the administrative.
He also suggested that somehow FERCog could reframe it to be like an ongoing thing, not like this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this year. So that it wouldn't have to get refiled every year. And you'd need somebody bigger than us to make that case and design it. And our administrators don't have that time and expertise.
Yeah. Bob.
Yeah, if we knew that we were going to be compensated for this, which is not true, I'm sure from everything I've heard, we could hire a professional engineer to manage this for us. But that's an issue that has to be understood, whether or not there's going to be federal or state money available to us to pay for this. I think Susie's absolutely right. This is an extraordinary burden on a little town to administer this on a yearly basis over and over again. And that an engineer, really, in a perfect world, or let's just say a more perfect world, there would be state help to do this with professionals doing it who are used to doing it and could do it more efficiently anyway than us. So I don't know how we could look into that, whether Aaron knows about that or whether there's any other, maybe Division of Water Quality or our own water committee could look into it for us. I don't know. Just I think Division of Water Quality must be hip to this issue, right, in Boston. I mean, I don't know who could look into that. Maybe we should, as Susie suggested, form a subcommittee to investigate that. It'd be nice to lay it out to somebody else, but maybe there isn't somebody else. Any ideas on that?
Well, I think that if we had a subcommittee, we'd identify what the different pieces are that are problematic and then try to put together, just even represent that to somebody, including Joe Comerford, including FERCog, because these are going to show up in other people's communities. I talked to Gabe today. She said New Salem has a problem, a PFAS problem. I know Sunderland has a PFAS problem, but they're just in a different place than we are. And so we could figure out where the glitches are and see who can help us think, what do we need to get along that every town is going to need to get along with.
April.
Yeah, I'm wondering if somebody like Al Werner in Shutesbury, who is quite, has a lot of knowledge about groundwater, because that's what we're dealing with. It's so, I don't know how we decide in town where to test. It's just, it gets into the groundwater and it's everywhere. But a subcommittee might help, but I wonder if something more regional as well needs to happen, if there's a way to connect with other local towns. I mean, what town doesn't have the problem? Maybe that would be easier to think about.
Well,
I don't know if he has the capacity for this, but could we ask Aaron or somebody from his office if there's any interest, ability to convene some kind of a regional discussion? It sounds like we have some information about, a couple of other municipalities that are dealing with this. But I'm sure that's not a complete list, right? And so maybe one step in this process would be first to get some clarity on like what are all of the towns that have received kind of these notices and are in some stage of the process of dealing with remediating these issues, and then have somebody like Saunders' office convene a sort of public kind of discussion where we could get together with the other towns that are dealing with this and maybe kind of develop a strategy together. Because the only thing that sounds a little weird to me about us kind of putting together, like a subcommittee is that it's not a Shutesbury problem. It's like and a Shutesbury solution. It's a regional, like it's really it's beyond the region, but it's a regional problem and regional solution that is kind of needed. And so my instinct is that if somebody like an Aaron Saunders office could convene something that might be more effective. Bob.
Yeah, just one thing occurred to me. I think the first thing that I would do, and maybe I will do, is call the consulting engineer that we hired to investigate this issue, who was the one who delineated the issue, designed the whole program that we're undertook to install. And this person, being a professional and doing this kind of work statewide, maybe region-wide, should be aware of whatever's available, what the resources are available that would help pay his bills. So that's just the way it works in these situations. I think, I don't know the name of that engineer. I've heard it many times, but I don't recall what it is.
Arps.
Pardon me?
It's Jeffrey Arps, but I guess maybe that's possible that he's watched how his bills are paid, but this is really a bureaucratic problem that I was addressing because I had just watched the town do a lot of work to submit the kind of information the Clean Water Trust required, even though, I mean, including like, well, why is this an emergency? Excuse me, this started off as an emergency and Aaron's office got involved because it was an emergency. Why do we have to start in the bureaucratic thing? Like, can you write in a little essay why this is an emergency? And then you go to the next application and be asked the same questions. So we were talking more about the bureaucratic thing, the way the water was detected and the way the testing is set up by DEP that's required. That's pretty clear to the town, but how you pay for it is the part that has been just tangled in bureaucracy. And he acknowledged that there's many things that come out of the state that are that way. They specialize in bureaucracy. We're busy trying to fix things here. We don't specialize in bureaucracy. That's not what we need to spend our time and money doing. And so his suggestion, and I agree with AJ, that maybe what we need to do is get him or Joe Comerford to approach this, to have a discussion and then figure out who to approach and how to push it. And what I'm really feeling, it's the bureaucracy that costs us time and money and has been really not forthcoming for a very ongoing problem.
Right. Okay. All right. Anything else come out of your meeting that you wanted to share?
The one thing I will mention is you probably saw in the paper that next year the state is going to release an extra $650 million from the surtax that went into effect. And so I asked him, does that mean more money for Chapter 70? By which he said, no, it's all going to go to transportation, mostly MBBTA. So doesn't, when I first saw that, I was very hopeful that they might come up with more funding for Chapter 70, and he just eliminated that hope right out of my head.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, if I can give an update from the regional school committee, which met on January 14th. I sent around the slide deck that that Shannon kind of walked through. This was part of an agenda item, which was their kind of for town and its follow up. I don't want to take up too much time. It's 8:15, but the long and the short of it is that there were there are now sort of 4 models that were discussed at this meeting. And I'll just explain what they are. First of all, there's some new assumptions around expenses. I don't think I will go into them right now, but okay. So model 1 is one where, if we fully fund the budget, there's no deficit, no cuts required, and we apply the modified statutory method to determine how much each town is going to pay. You can see what that results in here, and basically a 12% increase for Shutesbury, 8% for Amherst, all the way up to 27% for Pelham. Okay, an important model just for us to understand kind of what the sort of baseline is. Next model is one that basically caps Amherst at a 4% increase, but then uses the modified statutory method to determine the corresponding increases for all other communities. Under this model, we results in a $1 million deficit. And for Shutesbury, it results in a 6.7% increase, or increase of $111,000 above our FY25. But you can see here, we're still looking at large increases for Pelham and Leverett. Okay. Model 3 is kind of, the approach that I think we're moving away from, but is kind of what we did last year, which is apply a fixed guardrail to all 4 towns, which basically results in, in a fixed increase for all towns, and that would be 4%. This model results in a $1.4 million deficit. Okay. And then Shannon shared kind of her thinking on a hybrid model, which essentially, it's kind of she walked through the math. I think the important thing to share right now is that this assumes that there's a 3% increase that Amherst can do, and then basically kind of applies the proportional amount of the assessment that each town pays to determine then what everybody's assessments are. And this results in Okay, so that is, wait, this is the wrong slide, sorry. Okay. That results in this model here, which is Amherst increasing by 3%, Pelham increasing by 14%, Leverett increasing by basically 9%, and Shutesbury by 3%. Problem here is that this, and I don't know why she did this, but this model applies the same deficit of $1.4 million. This is the scary slide. So what is this deficit? And this is kind of splitting the difference here. She showed what kinds of cuts would be required if the deficit was $1.2 million. I don't quite know how I think she was trying to sort of split the difference between these two different models, one that results in a $1 million deficit and another one that results in a 1.4 million. Bottom line here is that we're looking at reductions totaling 24 positions, 5 in the central office, 8 teachers, 5 clerical staff, and 6 paraprofessionals. I mean, this is not pretty. You know, this is going to be really significant. Okay. I can't even remember what this slide was, but oh, this is where the reductions are basically coming from. I think that was the point of this slide. But anyway, I think I'm going to pause there. I just want to kind of keep you guys in the loop on this. Shannon, to just remind everybody, she's the new finance director for the region. She sent me an email asking for a discussion, a meeting that I think is going to happen on Thursday. Presumably it was to like talk through some of this. I don't know what else there is to say right now, but I think there are a couple of takeaways here. I think one is positive, which is that I think wherever we land, it's not going to be a model that uniformly applies an increase to all 4 towns. You know, I think they heard enough feedback, and even though there is one of the 4 models discussed here was a guardrails model, they didn't spend a lot of time on it at the meeting, and everybody was sort of talking as if that's not where we're going to end up. So I don't think we're going to have a model that applies a uniform increase to all 4 communities. I think that's the positive. I think, you know, the negative is that I think we're likely to look at a model that, you know, is going to call for a significant number of reductions, staff reductions. And I think we're going to have a similar kind of public outcry that we had last year. I don't know. Any questions or comments, Bob?
I just want to say, number one, that as far as I'm concerned, we should be very firm about staying with the modified statutory method, because the more that we employ these compromises or hybrids or guardrails, the further we get away from those levels of funding for our respective towns. So that's my position on that. The other thing is, looking at this budget, you see a couple of things. One, that the budget increased 6.85% over last year, which is an extraordinary increase for a budget after it increased last year, I think, by another 6%. And the other thing that I noticed looking at these numbers was that even though it was a 6.85% increase in spending, the support from Chapter 70 was so meager that it ended up resulting in a 10-point-something% increase in what has to be assessed because of the lack of support from the state. So that makes it even more difficult looking at those numbers. So we're facing a real crisis of this school and the related expenses. And as far as I'm concerned, we have to stay with the modified statutory method. It all comes down to what people are willing to pay. And Amherst will be the big voice in this, because if they set their level at whatever percent, 4%, 5%, 6%, we're going to follow along with that, and we're going to pay our fair share. And I hope that we do it under this modified statutory system of assessment, because these other measures don't really make sense. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Let's go to Susie.
In a timeline, I heard from Anna Hurd that this four-town meeting is projected for February 8th, Saturday, February 8th. We have a FinCom meeting on the 4th. 4th? Yeah, no, yes, on the 4th. So I do think we need to digest these numbers some and figure out what our positions are. And it does sound like there's going to be a modified statutory approach that's already here. And so we're not having to argue that the big part comes with how much Amherst is going to do. And Amherst has actually been less willing. And in time, I know, the select board met with the town clerk, and we will have our town meeting on April 26th. That's a set deal.
Yeah.
And one of the things about that is that that's pretty much ahead of Amherst. And so what happened last year is the small towns met first and they set the table. So, and Amherst was very upset about having to go along with that. It looks like that's going to happen again. We don't know whether the small towns will agree, but I don't think Amherst is going to be the lead on this. They're going to be loud at the four-town meeting, but I'm not sure they're going to actually be the ones that set the table. I want to mention that the local school budget, the rural aid was projected at 80,000 since that had come in the previous year. And I told them it was important to go with that number. The rural aid was not figured correctly at the state level. They forgot Martha's Vineyard and Williamsburg. And so the real aid came in at 76 something. So they are using 76,000 for their revenue projection for rural aid in FY26. So it changed the percentage a little bit because we were hoping for 80,000. So there's just a nudge there, but that nudge happens in all the towns that were in that pie, and Amherst gets rural aid. So what we're really hoping is that rural aid will go from this year's pie of 16 million to next year, maybe 60 million. And if they do that, we're already in that pie and we will benefit. But Caitlin also said the state is being edgy about our Title I funds, and that maybe we won't qualify for those this year. It's like, stop it. It's just such a shell game. And who said it? Aaron said, don't look to the state to backfill what the federal government is screwing up right now, because the federal government did not include rural education aid. We already have the grant for 2025 that already has been received. So even though they changed things in December, it's not going to affect FY25. But unless the federal budget gets fixed, it could affect FY26. And those are the numbers that we're already counting on. And we're 16,000 for the REAP grant. So it's really mushy. We're not going to know by April 26th. We're going to have to use the logic that FinComs use, which is realistic and conservative numbers. But there's a lot of moving parts. It's like the box sprang open this year, and we have a lot to deal with.
George.
Yeah, I just have one question. Susie, what was that date for the tentative schedule for the forum?
Last time I heard, it's February 8th.
Yeah,
Saturday, February 8th. AJ, did you hear that at your meeting?
I didn't, but I did notice that, and I looked at the FinCom inbox just before we pulled out, there's no mention of it. But I'm gonna pull it up right now. I think there is a meeting posted. And I was wondering, is that the Four Towns meeting? It was like labeled a little bit different. So I'm just gonna pull it up right now. Yeah, February 8th, Towns meeting and special meeting of Amherst, that must be.
That's
So
a Saturday.
it does look like it, yeah.
Yeah, it
February
is
8th
Saturday.
at 9 o'clock,
That's it.
presumably at the middle school again.
Yeah.
So let's, even though they haven't, I don't know what they're waiting for, but even though they haven't notified the towns yet, let's all pencil that in tentatively as the next Four Towns meeting. I also just wanted to say, like, of these models that at least were presented at the last meeting, I think the one that I personally could I'm not sure I like any of them, but the one that maybe I prefer is this Model 2, which has the smaller of the two deficits that we're looking at. It's $1 million as opposed to $1.4 million. And it applies the modified statutory method without any hybrid approach, any guardrails or anything. It's a huge, it's a big step for Pelham and Leverett, but kind of, there was some discussion at the last Four Towns meeting of, well, maybe we do need to just sort of have a year where everybody kind of bites the bullet and just, we just apply the formula and we deal with it, and then that sort of sets things for future budget years. It's a big increase for us, 6.7%, but I think, it's a smaller deficit, fewer losses, personnel losses, and it commits everybody to the modified statutory method without any funny math. And I think Amherst, despite their protests, can afford to increase their assessment by 4%. So I was wondering if you all were comfortable with me at least mentioning because again, Shannon has requested a meeting that of the models that were discussed at their last meeting, this is the one that was we most prefer. I don't know if that's a reasonable position to take. Bob, and then
Yeah.
George.
I just want to say, I absolutely agree with that. And I would support that, happily. And I think that it's predicated on Amherst going with 4, but hey, my prediction is that Amherst is going to come under a lot of political pressure from the people in town. There's nothing that is more politically engaged than a parent. Unless maybe it's a school teacher, but there's going to be a lot of pressure for Amherst to concede this. I think they'll probably do that. And I think 4% is a reasonable assumption that they'll go there. That's my guess. But I will definitely support that, and I would definitely want you to represent that to the regional school committee.
Okay, George.
We need to look at the budget and see what we can do.
I know.
Right now, we haven't seen the budget, and Gabe hasn't presented it to us. I know she's still pulling numbers together. I did meet with her today, and we talked about the budget. She and I have a plan to kind of coordinate what we're doing, and I'll keep her involved. Like the things we did today, I'm going to let her know about. But the back of the envelope, I was using 66,000 for a regional school increase. And the big items add up to about $360,000 increase in our budget. And then there's a lot of the little items across a lot of the departments, and we'll have to see what we get from Gabe. So we're looking at, I'm telling you, 450. If we do what you just suggested here, add another 50,000 for the region, we're 450,000. We're approaching $500,000 increases on our budget. We're approaching what would amount to, 9% increase in our budget. And we're not going to get that kind of revenue. So I want to support the school, and this 111,000 is that in the 121 for the elementary school alone. Those two things combined are really tough increases for us. But one thing we're noticing is I met with the personnel board and we talked about the potential COLA, and it looks like it's going to be just under 3%. But I did an analysis for the police chief, and because she's in negotiations right now, her salary is looking like it's much lower than the rest of the Franklin County police chiefs. And we know that the town administrator, they're advertising the position for much greater than what was in there last year. So this is a tough year on the budget. And I think we really do need to sit down with Gabe and try to get a picture of how our budget is stacking up before we start making promises to the region.
Yeah. Susie.
And we need a revenue picture to be generated. We know that 2.5 on what we already have, that increases like 160,000 or something.
Yes.
But we need to look at the other numbers, and we need to be putting a letter together to let our legislators and our governor know. We will have next week probably the governor's first shot. And so where we know the cap on the surtax is going to be increased, and we heard what Aaron said, maybe the governor wants to spin it a little differently. We don't know, but it's always good to know your revenue as best you
No,
can.
we need to, I think, there's not a whole lot of hope in revenue because the Chapter 70 number doesn't look like it's going to change tremendously. It's not going to change by more than the less than 1% we see every year. And I don't, the pilot money that we keep hoping is going to increase just doesn't seem to happen. The Quabbin bill seems to be stuck. And those are potential sources of revenue that just aren't happening. And new growth is really the only other place. And that's a hard one to put a value on. We know that there's some work being done this year, but who knows? I mean, last year we were very lucky. By the way, the numbers are out for almost all towns except for 8 on the average single family tax bill. And our increase was about, I think, $140. And that's a lot less than a lot of other towns were. That's less than a lot of other towns were. And so we moved down the list in terms of where we are relative to other towns and in terms of our average single family tax bill. But that's
George, since you've had kind of started the conversation with Gabe, do you think it's reasonable for us to expect at least a preliminary rough expense budget for our next meeting?
I think you should ask Gabe, because Gabe is working on all the town administrator things.
Okay.
We've pretty much heard from every department, and those are all in. Gabe has those, I have those.
Yeah.
And we can use a 2.95% for the pay increase. That's good enough for this analysis. It's only going to
What
be
was that? 2.95
95 is what I'm predicting. The index won't be out, but I used December's index and it was like 2.93.
Okay.
And so probably 2.92. So I think, the January index will be a little higher and it'll bring that number up, but I don't think it's going to exceed 3%. So you can use 3% for analysis purposes, which amounts to about $15,000. Because a lot of people are under contract. The school has a union in particular, and that's already set.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think that's probably a question for Gabe. Is she going to be comfortable to, and I don't think she's looked at the revenue side yet. I did mention it to her. She is aware of it. Although I didn't mention it today because we were focused on the expenses.
Okay. All right. I'll touch base with her. All right.
I think for a timeline, we really do need to have that rough draft next on the February 4th meeting. We know that the school committee will be in for a brief review of theirs. But I believe we need to have it in hand because, first of all, it makes me very anxious. And if I know what I'm dealing with, I'm less anxious, maybe. But the other thing is this is going to be the transition time for the ITA. And so we may need to do some of the work ourselves to get there. And I mean, really, I don't think we did the whole calendar from if town meeting's on April 26th, but we can do that now.
Yeah.
And, and we need to know that we need to start working on this.
One thing I can tell you is, talking to Gabe today, is it sounds like she's going to be around past February. Initially, that it was going to be the end of February, but she said basically she talked to the select board and she's going to be around, probably could be through March for sure, and possibly even right up to town meeting. And it also depends on who they hire, because, you know, if we hire a town administrator with town administrator experience, they may not want Gabe to be here. If we hire a manager who is qualified and strong but doesn't really know municipal government that well, that person may want Gabe here. And Gabe said, you know, she could be flexible through May. So just so you know, we don't have to worry about an end date for her as far as getting the budget, because I think
That's
she'll be
good to
around at
know.
least for that.
Mhm. April.
I just also wanted to add to the fund that we don't have any capital items
Right.
yet. Nothing has been presented. And I also worry about, you know, how this is impacting, you know, is Pelham going to be able to do the 22%, Leverett the 13%? I mean, every one of us, all of the towns are under extreme pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's nuts.
It is nuts.
Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, I'm curious, is there any way out of this deadline for the town meeting on the original date, or can we
No.
get around that? No?
The, in the discussion, the process of re-notifying all the registered voters that this is the new date, which would only end up being 2 weeks later. And the cost and the work to that, they voted to stick with the original date.
Okay.
And what's that original date? I know it.
April
26th?
26th,
Okay.
Yeah.
right there on the screen.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm on the minutes.
All right. So I'm gonna just treat my call with Shannon as I'm just gonna listen. It'll be kind of an information call. I'm not gonna share any position. I'll let her know that we're meeting next on February 4th, and that, you know, I'm sure we'll spend time at that meeting, planning and strategizing for Four Towns meeting on the 8th, but I'll leave it at that for now. And then I think, you know, when we talk on the 4th, hopefully we will have some sense of, at least on the expense side, what the budget's looking like based on, you know, our meetings so far with department heads. Susie.
There are things we haven't taken time to do, and I know it's not because we've been eating bonbons and laughing a lot. It's because we haven't looked at the review, we haven't reviewed the expense report. And last year, I suggested that we have just 2 people spend their time doing that and bring to the committee what is happening. I think especially because Gabe also is not able to provide that. So I would suggest that at
That's a good idea.
8:45 tonight, that we just have 2 people that want to look over the most recent expense report and flag anything that they want to and bring that to the next meeting, because, you know, we haven't been able to do it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. Who's anybody willing to volunteer to do that? Bob?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kathy?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay. All right. So just to remind you, I think, you know, I would just pull whatever the most recent expense report on the website, which right now is, what is it?
December something.
December
19th.
19th. So, perhaps there'll be a new one, but if you could, whatever you see is the most recently posted expense report, that'd be great. And I'll make sure we save some time on the agenda at our next meeting to discuss that. Okay. Any other business before we wrap up tonight? Thanks for hanging in there, guys. I know we've had a couple of long meetings just because we've had lots of budget reviews. But it's that time of year.
Next
I
one
guess.
will be too.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Second.
Arbanite side.
Groves, I.
Hemingway, aye.
Gashu, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I.
And Stein, aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
A lot of
Thank
fun.
you.
Next
See you.
meeting, February 4th. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.